To discuss this, with me here in the studio is Yahya Al-Aridi. He's a spokesman for the opposition Syrian Negotiations Commission. In Idlib, we have Rania Kisar. She's the Chief Executive Volunteer Officer at the Syrian Humanitarian Institute for National Empowerment. In Washington, D.C., we have Nicholas Heras. He's a fellow at the Center for a New American Security. And completing our panel from Stuttgart is Kevork Almassian. He's the founder of Syriana Analysis, an independent online Syrian news channel. Thank you all for joining us. Let me start with you, Rania, because it's not often that we actually get to speak to somebody within Idlib. Does it feel like there's a cessation, like there's calm? What does it feel like?
Yes, it does feel like that. We are feeling a little bit less stressed. We know that the shelling is no longer going to happen. We are very grateful to the government of Turkey. We are very grateful to the Turkish people. If it wasn't for Turkey, probably the regime and the Russians would have shelled us by now. However, we are still very weary about the future of what is going to happen to us. For example, what's going to happen to the millions of people who were forcibly exiled from their cities, from their homes? What's going to happen to Idlib in general? We're still trying to absorb this new agreement. It is a little bit vague for us. We don't know about the small details that would affect us on ground. And I want to say on behalf of millions of people, I don't think we will agree to seeing Russian forces in our streets.
Right. Okay. And that's a big fear that a lot of people there have. Yahya, do you in general support the Russian-Turkish deal?
Well, first of all, we felt that Idlib avoided a strike. Definitely, it was planned, and the deal, first of all, when it was signed in Astana, it was signed, but it was not really certain, because Iran at that time promised its partners that that deal would not go through. The good thing about it is that it went through with that summit in Sochi between President Erdogan and Putin. And I believe the millions of civilians in Idlib were saved. That's for the time being, because we were not used to Russians not breaking those de-escalation areas. It happened in Al-Ghouta, in the south, in Homs, in other areas. However, we understand that there were many reasons for this deal to be struck, to be signed. The people of Idlib, the civilians, took to the streets in hundreds of thousands, and Rania will attest to this fact, and she was there. We heard her voice. Another thing, the relationship, special relationship between Turkey and Russia. Actually, it was something very important for not carrying out that attack that was planned by the Iranians, the regime.
Right. Kevork Almassian, is this the way this is going to turn out? Is this a sign of things to come? Diplomacy among the bigger powers sorting out this war?
Actually, diplomacy is the continuation of a war, but with different means. In this regard, the Battle of Idlib is still going on, but with diplomatic tools. In my opinion, this deal is a not bad deal for all the sides. It could turn into a win-win solution, not only for the Syrians from different spectrum of the Syrian society, but also for the regional and international powers in Idlib, because this hotspot includes tens of thousands of, let's say, hardcore militants. So the Syrian interest is to eliminate these militants. So this deal could start by disarming the hardcore militants in Idlib, especially in the first the 20 kilometers, which would be a buffer zone. And also it would try to the bond that it exists between Jabhat al-Nusra, al-Nusra Front, and other smaller groups would be broken by Turkey. So if Turkey implemented this deal, in my opinion, this could lead into positive consequences, and we could spare a lot of bloodshed, not only among the Syrian army, let's say, officers, but also victims that could fall in this a very dirty war in Idlib, which include, in my opinion, at least 70,000 fighters who are holding the civilians as human shield in Idlib.
Okay, and we're going to get a little bit more into that about the proportions of who's extreme and who's not. This is something I want you guys to tackle for me. But when we look at a group, Nicholas, like Jabhat al-Nusra, and all its various incarnations and the different names, who's going to disarm them? How are they going to be easily convinced to step out of the theater of war and go to the other side? Is it that easy to do?
Well, I would start by saying that the view here from Washington is that an agreement that's made between Russia and Turkey is a positive step forward. Fundamentally, Turkey and Russia are the foreign actors, I would say, that have most interested and most influential on the dynamics on the ground in northwestern Syria. For the new team that the Trump administration has established for Syria policy, this was step one. Step one was to provide a significant amount of diplomatic cover for Turkey to be able to engage in strength with Russia. And hopefully this deal will save tens of thousands of lives and prevent hundreds of thousands of people from being displaced. But now we are at stage two, and the open question is what happens next. Russia, the United States, and Turkey are all in agreement that northwest Syria, in particular Idlib, has become a safe haven for Al-Qaeda and similar organizations. And in fact, some of these groups are woven into the local civil society in that region, and that's going to make it very difficult. It's going to take time. It's going to take the investment of Turkish military power. And I would say that one of the consensus that seems to be forming here in Washington is there a pathway for the Syrian opposition to take an active role to diminish the influence of groups like Heras or the Turkestan Islamic Party or Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and others,
so let me
prevent massive bloodshed.
Okay, let me get a response from Rania here. Rania, when Nicholas said that Idlib is a safe haven for Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda-linked groups, and we also had Kevork saying there are about 70,000 militants, in his opinion, using civilians as human shields. You were shaking your head in disagreement. Tell me why.
Because it's not true. I'm here on ground. I've been here for 8 months straight ahead. I have not left Syria, and it is not true that these people are using us as human shields. Yes, they have some power here, but it's not very strong, and it is something that can be tackled. It is something that can be tackled internally with the help and assistance of the Turkish government. We're not sure how exactly this is going to happen. We know that this is something that should happen. It would have been amazing and great if the United States of America, my country, would have assisted in something like this, because they have the intel, they have the information, they know the how-to. But unfortunately, we only have Turkey to help us with something like this. They are not using us as human shields, but what is happening is that they are in the same household. In the same household, you have someone from Ahrar, someone from HTS, someone from Heras, and someone from the FSA, Free Syrian Army. So how are you going to separate those family members from each other and identify which one is the one that is going to be the most brutal, or the person that suffers with PTSD? Who should we worry from? We're not exactly sure how this should be tackled. This should have been a matter that should have planned in advance by several people outside of Syria. And unfortunately, and I want to say this again, it is only Turkey that is helping us with this.
Right. Okay. Kevork, let me put it to you this way. If the vast majority of the rebels were extremists, do you think Putin would have agreed to this deal in terms of separating the extremists from the moderates? Isn't there an implicit and explicit acceptance that the vast majority of the rebels happen to be moderate rebels or acceptable non-extremist rebels, if Putin even agreed to this in the first place with President Erdogan?
let's put things into a proper context. First of all, your guest from Idlib, she defined human shield in the best form possible when she said the militants of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham or Ahrar al-Sham or the Turkestan party, they live among the civilians. This is the definition of human shield, because if the Syrian army targets these terrorists, that means victims will happen in Idlib. However, in regards to your question, I believe this was a realistic and rational deal, regardless if the militants are mostly radicals or not, because Russia wanted to contain also a Western strikes against Syria, because the Western governments, their warships are in the Mediterranean and they are planning for strikes. So in my opinion, Russia delayed the liberation of Idlib, and it turned into a process in coordination with the Turkish side. Both sides could dismantle the hardcore militants there, especially Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the Islamic Turkestan Army, the Uzbekis, the Tajikis, the Uyghurs, all these multinational terrorists. There should be an international deal in this regard. This is not our business that thousands of fighters came to our country to fight for against the Syrian government. So in this regard, Russia was realistic, and in my opinion, Turkey also Turkey also did the good thing in this at this time. And in my opinion, the signature that has been put by not only by the presidents but also between the ministers of defense between both sides means this should be forced and implemented underground. If it happened, this serves the interest of most Syrians, because it will eliminate the hardcore militants. It will spare a bloodshed between all sides. And at the end, the highways between Aleppo to Latakia and Aleppo to Idlib and Hama will be open, and people will be relieved. So I don't understand why people are worried from this. But I stress
Kevork,
that Turkey should implement the
certainly
agreement.
But perhaps, Kevork, we have a track record of 7 years of the Syrian regime and its Russian allies bombing quite indiscriminately. It wasn't always the case of, no, we only bomb the most extreme. You have to, almost have your Al-Qaeda identity card for us to bomb you. That didn't happen in Aleppo. It didn't happen elsewhere in the country. So they have a reason to be afraid, don't they?
I am from Aleppo, sir. I am from Aleppo, and I know what happened in my city and how it was invaded by different factions in mid-2012. And we were very happy that the Syrian government liberated the eastern neighborhoods of Aleppo. I'm sure that you won't be happy if Al-Nusra Front occupied half your city and they are shelling with thousands of hell cannons on your heads, and your beloved ones are dying on every day. 13,000 people dead in 4 years, and nobody uttered a word about them. So this is something that you also have to be objective about it, that the people are not only against the government, there are many people with the government, and they want to feel relieved and to be liberated from these hardcore Islamists. And remember that also hundreds of thousands of people also fled from Idlib to other provinces and want to go back to their city.
That's the other side of this narrative here. The side that says that Bashar al-Assad, no matter how brutal, is fighting a just war. Yahya, tackle that for me.
Well, let's take the whole issue to its roots. When things started in Syria in 2011, the best excuse, the best pretext to justify killing those people who said, no, we want a change of the government, we want freedom, we want to live as normal human beings, not under suppression, not under dictatorship, those were labeled automatically terrorists. When Nusra was not there, when Daesh was not there, when no terrorism was not there. And the best prescription for Al-Assad to wage this war against the people who revolted against him is to use the term terrorism, which was historically used by Israel to label the Palestinians. Now, they found this is the best way. There were in jails certain people, extremists, and they were released after a few months of the uprising in Syria. And those turned into heads of several groups. Now, foreigners also played this game. The leaders of these people who are now being labeled terrorists came from outside, from different countries. Those people should, the whole world effort should be there in order to throw those leaders of these groups back to their countries.
Certainly, but you have Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, 10,000 fighters, they're there, it's a reality.
Okay.
Even if Assad screwed the whole thing up, you know, from the very beginning. He slaughtered innocents. He called legitimate protesters terrorists. However we got to this point now, you have some terrible groups operating on the ground right now.
Rania,
who's going to do the dirty work to dismantle those people?
Rania said something quite essential there. You would have a family of 4 young men. One of them belongs to this group, the other one to second, third, fourth. Now, this is, you are saying that this is so important. Now, just give now those people a chance, sometime, to tell them that their original demand for a change, for feeling free, for living their lives, for leading their lives without dictatorship, without brutality of the regime, without submissiveness of their lives, I think they would come to reason, and the leaders would be thrown away, and those would come back to normal life. They are not fond of fighting. The whole thing started in Syria quite peaceful, and the government itself, the Bashar al-Assad government itself, attested to this fact. They said it started peacefully.
But, okay, so as we move forward beyond 2011 and 2012 and fast forward right to where we are now, is this possibly a first step to seeing how peace can be implemented not only in Idlib but elsewhere in the country? Or is it rather the calm before the storm, the calm before an eventual capitulation of Idlib to Assad and the Russians?
Well, one thing, there are certain UN Security Council resolutions. There is the Geneva Communique and there is the 2254. They talk, first of all, about ceasefire. The Russians took selectively that particular point and took it to Astana and started de-escalation areas where they breached them. Idlib was the gathering place for all those people who were under siege for a long time, who were bombarded, then they were thrown into Idlib. You would have now this huge number. Now, this needs a settlement. Those people could lead their own lives. They don't want the dictatorship to be back again into their lives. Now, the effort of the international community should be there, and Syrian people should be given a chance to implement these UN Security Council resolutions by getting rid of the dictatorship that killed 1 million people and jailed till now almost 500,000, destroyed half of the country. We are now just focusing on one particular thing that was used continuously as a pretext by Russia, by the regime, by the Iranian militias, by Iran.
The extremists.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let me go to Nicholas Heras, and I want to quote the U.S. Defense Secretary to you, Jim Mattis. He said, Idlib is one of the most complex problems in a complex theater of conflict right now, so I'm quite sure it's not all sorted. When he says that, is that him showing a cool, rational head here that we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves, or is it an indication maybe the U.S. is a little jealous that the Russians and Turkey are sorting this out without the U.S. at the table?
Well, I would start by saying that the United States has had a significant role behind the scenes. And you see that with Secretary of State Pompeo's new focus on the Syrian conflict. The fact that the Trump administration has made it very clear that it will not withdraw U.S. forces from eastern and northern Syria until the Geneva process is well advanced, which means a pathway towards transition in Assad from power, and Iranian forces and their proxy militias have been withdrawn before U.S. forces. But returning to Idlib, I think we should make it very clear. There are red, blaring lights within the U.S. government right now about the threat from extremist organizations inside Greater Idlib. And that is a common denominator that the U.S. shares with Russia, and based on the statements of the Turkish government and President Erdogan's op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, a common denominator with Turkey. I think what we can say, based on the discussion to this point, is that there's some agreement that the situation in Greater Idlib can only be solved by the Syrians on the ground. And the Syrian opposition now has to face a terrible truth, and it's a devil's dilemma, as highlighted by Rania, which is number of these extremist organizations have woven themselves into the social fabric of the local population in Idlib. And all of these groups, Turkestan Islamic Party, Heras ad-Din, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and others, have foreign fighters, yes, but they also have a significant component that are Syrian. And it's up to the Syrian opposition with the support of Turkey and potentially the United States, to take out this challenge.
Okay, let me bring in Professor Ahmet Kasim Han. He joins us now in studio, Professor of International Relations at Kadir Has University. Thanks for joining us. Firstly, very simply, what's in it for Turkey? Why is this so important to strike this deal with the Russians for Idlib?
First, thank you very much for having me. Why is it so important? It is clear that this is very, very important for Turkey because, first of all, of the imminent refugee crisis that such an operation in Idlib as originally was, we understand, intended by the Russians and the Syrian regime has contemplated and tried to execute. That would have created a massive influx of refugees in millions, again, towards Turkey. Mm-hmm. Turkey already hosts 3.5 million refugees. And that means that an addition of 1 million would matter a lot. It's not a marginal addition to what is in Turkey or the burden that Turkey is already sharing. Plus, this influx of refugees would probably be accompanied by the infiltration of some of the jihadists within Idlib to join themselves in the mass and make their way make their way to Turkey, and they probably would not sit still once they are in Turkey. So will create a security risk for Turkey, will create a security risk for the general international security architecture too.
So part of the deal is that there's this sorting out that will take place. Now you have millions of civilians, innocent Syrians who just want to live their lives. You have nationalists, you have Islamists who don't want to impose horrible, a more hardcore version of life on anybody else. Mm-hmm. But then among them, you have these extremists, like the former Jabhat al-Nusra. Is it Turkey's job now to try and take this tangled web and pick apart the bad threads and try and sort this out? And if so, how on earth are they going to do that?
Well, that is the bad news in the good news, I have to say, because the answer to your question seems to be a yes. It is now Turkey's job mainly to do what you have described. And it is a very hard job, if not mission impossible. And that is, I have to say, that the source of concern that people who are approaching this deal, which in itself is a great success, with suspicion. Why do I call this in itself a great success? Because I think that the best that could be achieved at this point in time, given the circumstances surrounding the Idlib issue, I would say that this is the best possible world that could be created within the framework of an agreement between Russia and Turkey. However, is it an absolutely good and easy to implement agreement? No, it is not. Is it an agreement that necessitates cooperation from some of those groups who has, to say the least, proven not to be very easy to cooperate with in the past? Yes, it does. And without their cooperation, it will be a hard bargain to realize. And we really do not know what the reaction of Russia, Iran, and the Syrian regime would be in case that Turkey is not able to fully satisfy whatever they need. Yeah. And that is also one gap in this agreement. We do not know what are the key success factors. Yeah, all we have is a deadline. What should be attained and what should be considered a success. Yeah,
so we've got October 15th as a date for this demilitarized area of 15 to 20 kilometers deep into Idlib to try and create this buffer zone, demilitarized zone. Rania, after all these years, as someone who's in Idlib right now, with all the trouble that's happening and the relative calm right now, and everybody trying to sort this out, Turkey and Russia making their move, let me ask you, who do you trust? Is there anyone you trust?
I trust God. I trust God and the Syrian people. I trust the willingness of the people to die for the sake of their dignity. I trust Turkey because they are close to us and they have always wanted us well. But before I answer your very important question, I want to reply to Mr. Almassian. Mr. Almassian, I'm not trying here to personalize the conversation and take it down to a lower level because this is a very important conversation. But for God's sake, what are you doing in Stuttgart if the regime is so good? If the regime had recovered Aleppo for you, why have you left Aleppo? That's number one. Number two, have you not noticed, have you not heard, have you not seen about the people who have been reconciled and have gotten killed in Aleppo? We're here on ground, you're in Stuttgart. We know what the regime is doing. Have you not noticed the complete deletion of our Syrian heritage by the Russian forces who have entered Aleppo? Have you not seen what the Iranians are doing to us as far as religion is concerned? Have you not seen the continuous arrests, human arrests for no reason? It is still going on. And sir, why in God's sake have you not seen the number, the huge influx of people that have left Aleppo after the reoccupation of Aleppo? As far as who do I trust, and I don't want him to reply. I'm not going to listen to an answer from someone who supports a killer. I'm sorry. And I reiterate, I do not want him, I do not want you to reply.
If you believe in democracy as you claim, if you believe in freedom of expression as you claim, if you believe that the people should have their opinion, then you have to respect the other opinion and listen to them, as I am doing to you respectfully.
If I want to respect an opinion, I will respect the opinion. If I want to respect an opinion, I will respect the opinion of someone who does not support the killer.
Okay, so Rania, here we go. Kevork, go ahead. Respond.
It's obvious. I've been following your work in Idlib, and I know what you do in Idlib. I'm also monitoring the situation there. And answering to your question, I'm in Stuttgart because your beloved freedom fighters in Aleppo in 2012, they kidnapped my brother, they sniped me twice, they destroyed my father's shops. These people who you call the Free Syrian Army, they destroyed our everything in Aleppo. That's why the people escaped from Aleppo, because they were afraid. Those democratic
is it because you were participating in the killings of innocent people, sir? Of course, your own people from your neighborhood are not going to let you stay alive if you are participating in their killing.
Okay, Kevork, Rania's claim. Rania says she used the term shabiha. Respond to that. I've got to wrap very soon. She used the term shabiha, collaborator with the regime. Yeah. Go ahead, respond, sir, and that will be the final word because we are out of time. Go ahead, Kevork.
The people who kidnapped my brother and tried to kill me, they were from the Free Syrian Army in Heras area, and she knows very well in 2012 who were occupying that area. So trying to distort the reality in Aleppo is not in your interest, lady. And I know what you're doing in Idlib. Your people were calling for drinking blood of the Nusayris, quote unquote, meaning the Alawites in Idlib a few days ago. They were calling for extermination of the minorities. You were saying that you want Islam, and Sharia, and that Prophet Muhammad is your perfect model in Idlib. No, this is not a definition of democracy in Idlib that you are trying to promote. Your videos are on the internet.
Trying to protect themselves through their religion, then that is their right to do.
What you are calling for in Idlib, you're not calling for democracy and human rights.
Forever and ever. Rania, final 20 seconds, please. Rania, final 20 seconds, please.
Thank you for giving me the last 20 seconds. Even though the people here in Syria are calling for their religion, it is because they're feeling cornered. And what do people, human beings, do when they feel that they're going to die? Number one, they will go back to their God, to their creator. They will call out for their freedom. They will try to save their souls. Number two, everybody that I saw in the streets in Marit and Oman and in all of Idlib, nobody was calling for a Sharia law. Nobody was calling for an Islamic rule. We want democracy. We want freedom. What we want is for people like you.
That's a huge, big
people
lie.
Like you. It's my turn to speak, sir. What we want is for people like you who claim to be honorable Syrians to find out the truth and stand on the right side. Okay. It is a shame, sir, that someone who claims to be Syrian agrees to the killings of more Syrians. Try not to come back to our country, Mr.
Okay. Rania, Kevork, Nicholas, Ahmet Kasim Han, and Yahya Al-Aridi. I've got to wrap. I've got to button this because I have to move on. But I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers.